Charlie, I can't take
Adele is done.
Right.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Test.
Carmen, can we just do a mic check?
Can you hear me?
Sorry, Carmen, one more time.
Can you hear me now?
The speakers are feeding back.
Okay.
Can make sure we're good. Carmen, one more time.
How's that?
Perfect, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, this is a special meeting of the Seaford Board of Education, Sunday, June 6th. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You should have seen the flag, no? Or- I guess I didn't share. I forgot to share. Okay, well. Okay, good evening, everybody. Basically, we calling this meeting to discuss what happened with the governor and the letter from the Department of Health to the CDC. Just to bring everybody up to speed, I'm sure everybody read the papers, heard the news, where they claim that a letter was sent waiving all the requirements effective tomorrow as far as masks goes and making it optional for the schools. Turns out that is not the case. We received an email from the State Educational Department to clarify that masks are still required in the schools pursuant to the reopening plans. They did indicate that, assuming the response from the CDC, that it is possible that the governor will announce tomorrow or at another date that those new Mandates will be in effect, urging people to wear masks but not requiring them. So at this time, a letter has already or is in the process of going out from our superintendent informing the public about that. The task force met this afternoon at 4 o'clock. So I'm going to ask Adele to update us on what they discussed, and we'll discuss what our future actions will be in as far as this. So I'm going to mute myself. Adele, if you want to.
So we had a brief meeting with the task force, and we were taking a look both at the letter that Dr. Zucker had written, as well as the most recent message that came out from New York State Education Department later today, actually in the afternoon today. And it was pretty clear from the New York State Education Department that we should really be in a holding pattern right now. Within it, it explicitly says that the State Education Department has been in communication with the executive staff regarding the attached document, which was the letter I had mentioned from Dr. Howard Zucker, the New York State Commissioner of Health. According to the conversations with the executive staff, the intent of this letter was to obtain a response from the Center of Disease Control regarding differing standards for summer camps and schools. It has not changed any of the existing arrangements. So the letter does a very nice job of posing the question. There seem to be different requirements for summer camps than there are for schools. Why is this? And it would be our intent to even the playing field to make them all the same with your approval. However, there has not been any approval. There have been no changes in executive orders. And, as stated by the New York State Education Department, therefore, schools should continue to operate under their existing procedures until further notice. No changes have been or will be made by the executive until after Monday, June 7th, to afford the CDC an opportunity to respond to the letter. So we're basically told by one government agency, meaning the New York State Education Department, which is we follow their guidelines, that says do not make any changes in your protocols until you hear further and until there's clarification with regards to what I think everybody's anticipating is an executive order from the governor saying that the regulations have changed and people should go in and then change their reopening plans. Because right now we have a reopening plan that's filed with the New York State Education Department that says that masks are required. So theoretically, we would meet with the Reopening of Schools Task Force, change the language in the reopening plan. Then the board, as it has in the past, would vote on the revised reopening plan and we put it in place. That's really the sequence of events. And I will put, I'd like to just mention that it's very hard to do with a flip of the switch because there are people on both sides of what their wants are with this particular situation. And if we go forward, and we've always done this, right? Every decision that we've made has been because we followed the guidance from these governing state agencies. The problem is right now, it appears that the state agencies are giving conflicting messages. So we need the state agencies to get on the same page. Then they issue us guidance. Then after they issue us guidance, we've done this in the past. We've always adhered by that. We've always done that which is permissible. So if the governor does change the rules and if the governor allows for people to have choice with regards to wearing masks or not wearing masks, and that door is open, then as a district, we would decide, since it's permissible, whether we would move forward with that. And if we did move forward with that, then we'd need to put in place protocols to keep everybody safe. So it's not as easy as just saying, well, some come with masks, some don't come with masks. We have children that are immunocompromised. And as everybody knows, you wear a mask to protect others, not necessarily to protect yourself. So even if those children wear masks, that's going to be part of the solution. So we have to have conversations with families. And if families, even as simple as if families have choice, if a mom says, I want my child to wear a mask, and then that child gets to school and takes the mask off, how are we supposed to establish protocols? Do we have to send out a survey to all parents by teacher? Do we have to have a list of who wants a mask, who doesn't want a mask? Is it on the honor system for a kid in kindergarten? And it's the same rule as a child that's in 12th grade. So all of these types of things, we've kept schools safe because we have been very responsible about making sure that all of our protocols were aligned and making sure that we've protected all different stakeholders. So at this point in time, if we go forward with removing masks, I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to giving choice, but we have to do it well. And in order to do it well, the administrators and the team and the teachers have to be consulted. Everybody has to come together to develop the protocols to do it well. Because say I have a kindergartner and I want my child to wear a mask. Well, how do I communicate that? How do we enforce that? What's the responsibility of the teacher? What's the responsibility of the principal? What's the responsibility of the parent? All of those things we need to think through, because otherwise we're going to create a very frustrating last 2 or 3 weeks of school. So as I said before, if we're given permission, we've always done that which we've been allowed to do. But it doesn't mean we'll be able to flip a switch and do it immediately, because we have to do it in a thoughtful, careful way so that everybody feels safe and secure to the best of our ability. I mean, we're never going to make everybody happy, but to the best of our ability. And it's going to take us some time to update our plan, and it's going to take us some time just to get those things in place. I mean, we're not talking weeks, but once the declaration is made, it's going to take us a couple of days to get everything in place at least.
Okay, I don't know how everybody else feels. I would say you should probably start tomorrow planning and not wait until we actually get something from the governor.
Well, we already started. You know, we already started laying the groundwork with the reopening of schools task force today. We already are going to have a team meeting with the administrators 9:30 tomorrow morning. So we're already starting to think along those lines as to the things that need to be changed. And we're starting in anticipation that that would happen. We've already begun those discussions. So planning has started and it will continue through tomorrow. We're not going to wait for the governor to release this before we start planning.
Anybody want to add anything? Or, I mean, at some point we need to vote on this again. So I don't know. I asked Mary Ann to come up with a resolution. I don't think that is sufficient for what we were just talking about. So do we want to either modify this, or do you want to wait till we have more information and then wait to vote on it?
I think we have to wait till we get more information before we vote on anything. Just who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? Like, we don't know. We don't know what the CDC is going to say or what the state's going to do, or even if they do answer. So I think it's, until then, we have to sit on our hands and wait. So.
Everybody else's opinion?
I think we need to, I agree. I think we have to wait to see what the guidance is. And then the language in the reopening plan has to be changed. And that's what we base our resolution on. Is that correct? What the reopening plan says? That's what we would be voting on?
I thought they met today and they agreed to, if the governor issues these guidelines, they agreed to accept that.
No, we didn't do that. What we said was, if the governor changes the plans, we'll take a look at what is issued. We don't know what he's going to say at this point in time. If he lessens the mask restrictions, then we will look at lessening the mask restrictions in the district. But we haven't gotten as far as saying that without seeing exactly what is required, we're adopting it.
Mary Ann, I don't know if you hear me or if you're on the call. Can you weigh in on the way we need to do this, please? That way we're all on board.
Yeah, so I think as we talked about, I know I spoke with you, Bruce, earlier, and I've spoken to Adele several times today. Remember that whenever you modify your reopening plan, you have to engage your stakeholders. And I think that's what Dr. Pecora is talking about in terms of not being able to flip a switch. Because first of all, we know what Dr. Zucker's letter to Dr. Walensky says. We don't know how that's going to be translated either by an executive order or by the Department of Health updating the guidance that applies to schools. So until we see that, it's difficult to engage your stakeholders because we can make an assumption that it's going to be what Dr. Zucker put in the letter to Dr. Walensky. But I don't think you can bank on that, especially based upon what we've seen over the course of the last 14 or so months. So I think that the process really should be get yourselves as ready as you can, start engaging the stakeholders now in anticipation of something being issued. Then your reopening plan has to be redeveloped with updated information that is vetted through the stakeholders again. And then the board adopts the revised or modified reopening plan.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Marianne from our legal counsel?
So how quick could we adopt that plan? As soon as it's put in place?
Well, Marianne, correct me. I don't know if you heard, did you hear Andrea's question? No, okay. She asked how long will it take for us to adopt that plan after the task force? Well, I mean, as soon as we can have the board meeting after that, right? There's no.
Right. You have to
20
develop the
I don't think
modified, right. You'd have to develop the modified plan. And then, you know, for example, this is, as you guys know, this is my second special meeting for the evening. I think everybody was anticipating that they might have to adopt a modified reopening plan. So I think for purposes of process and timeline, it says quickly, I mean, the board can meet on less than 24 hours notice, as you know, with the consent of each of the members of the board. But I think that the important part of the timeline is getting the guidance and incorporating that into an updated reopening plan. And as Dr. Pokora said, that's not necessarily a flip of the switch, that it does require some thought. Even what Dr. Zucker has in his communication to Dr. Walensky, there are still open questions regarding how to implement that, which the reopening plan should address.
Right,
If I may, one of the considerations that is not or is silent in Dr. Zucker's letter is the effects of transportation. So right now we have no idea whether masks should or should not or can or cannot be worn on buses. Overall, the governor has not made any changes with regards to transportation. We know that it's one of the highest transmission places is on a school bus. In the past, again, with masks on and some of the protocols we've had in place, and we take a look at the time that children are on buses together and so forth, we've been able to hold this at bay. If masks are not on a school bus and somebody has COVID, we're going to be looking at quarantining that school bus, which basically will mean quarantining the school, because you just don't have children in an isolated class. So all of the work that we've done to sit people by cohort at the middle school and in the elementary schools will go out the window if you have a whole bus full load of kids that have to be quarantined. So I'm assuming he's going to say that you have to wear masks on buses. And if he says you have to wear masks on buses, it's as simple as you have to wear masks on buses. So who's going to enforce that? And is the bus driver supposed to be paying attention to driving the kids? He's not supposed to be paying attention to that. So can everybody get on board and say then, well, they're masks on buses? And then you have to determine once the kiddies walk in school, if we say, and I'm not opposed to releasing restrictions as long as we have an executive order and we have direction that we can do so. I'm not against this at all, but I'm definitely against not doing it in a thoughtful and safe manner. So once the kids come into school, then it becomes, especially at the elementary age, you need to respect the opinions of all families. You don't want a mask if that's the choice and it's legal, that's fine. You do want a mask. Well, then how do we keep the youngster with a mask on if the kid doesn't want to wear a mask and the parent wants the mask on? These things are not you just don't say, okay, well, everybody shows up, mask on, mask off, and everything's going to go the way the parents want it to go, or the way, it's going to be a safe functioning of the schools. So that's why we're meeting with the administrators tomorrow. If mask restrictions are lessened, what are we going to do? Then we're going to take the recommendations from the administrators and we're going to put the task force together. Right now, we have a task force meeting on the 10th. If we have to have it sooner, I said to the group before we left today, we may have to call one sooner. And if we have to call one sooner, it's the same thing. Anybody that can come, we'll call it sooner and we'll move it along. I'm not looking to halt, stall, delay anything. I'm looking to do this in a thoughtful and deliberate manner. And we've done such a great job all year long. At the last, whatever it is, it's going to be like 7 or 8 days of really in school for the high school kids before they enter into their exams. I think it's 8 days for the middle school kids. And then I think we have maybe, 15 days left for the elementary kids. My fear is what the unintended consequences of this are. And again, if the direction is to lessen the restrictions, that's fine. But I've received a handful, not a lot, admittedly, of emails from senior parents basically saying, what are you doing? Why would you consider releasing this? Because even if my child wears a mask, if somebody else doesn't wear a mask and my child gets quarantines because that person got sick, which I'm going to have to quarantine them without masks, then my child misses graduation, or my child misses prom, or my child misses a playoff game. And it was through no fault of my own child. My child walks into school wearing a mask. I'm sensitive to that. I have to be able to listen to all stakeholders and be sensitive to that. I would be pretty upset if my son wore a mask when he was in high school and he missed his championship lacrosse game. I'd be really, really upset about that because he did what he thought was going to protect him and keep him. And, and I don't think the answer is, well, everybody goes remote. I mean, that's not done by the flip of a switch either, particularly at the elementary level. And should we give, that's what we spoke about at the task force today. Do we offer remote instruction for the last 2 weeks in school? For elementary, we have the remote teachers, but again, is that fair to the existing remote classes? At the middle school level is probably maybe the more seamless of the 3 different levels, but at the high school level, kids are gearing up for regents exams and final exams and all these end of the year activities. And we really want them in school. So we're afraid that there'd just be a surge of kids all doing remote because they're afraid of missing prom. So
Yeah, it's a bad situation. I mean,
the reason why I'm telling the board this is because these are the emails that we get across the board. We understand people's frustration with wearing masks. I have a frustration with wearing a mask. I understand it. We've always done that which is permissible. But to do that which is permissible and to do it well, we've said all along, our reopening plan was a very solid reopening plan. It took months to build that plan. Months. And we had great success with keeping our schools open because it was deliberate and it was smart. I have no problem taking masks away. I really don't. But I do not want to wind up with a situation where I have people crying on my doorstep because their kids are going to be precluded from things. And everybody has to go in with eyes wide open. If we do this, these are the benefits, these are the risks, and we just need to know what it is. And I'm okay with that, but I would feel like I'm negligent if I don't articulate and express some of the concerns that I've received in emails. Because, we're finally at the point where the entire senior class is going to be at a graduation ceremony at the Tiller Center. It's happening. And some people are worried that it's not going to happen for them if we start to change things up at the last minute. That being said, I understand the frustrations of a kindergartner that, the parents just don't want that child wearing a mask. We had a brief discussion about would we even consider doing different things in different buildings because there's less social distancing at the high school and maybe just keep a mask requirement at the high school. We had a brief discussion about that. But again, these are very meaty conversations that we had a meeting for about an hour and a half, and you can't do it in a slipshod way. Because if it were my kid that was denied access to something, I'd be heartbroken. And some of us that are sitting here will be heartbroken if we hear those stories, and we're not going to have a choice. Because we need to do what the Department of Health says when I call on a contact tracing case. So these are all things to consider. The bus, the this, the that. I mean, we can wind up opening up, and I'm not saying this to panic people. I'm saying it because it could happen. I'm not saying it to panic people. And again, I have no aversion to removing masks. The governor says, listen, we should all be happy. If the governor and the Department of Health say they believe that it's safe enough for people not to walk around with masks in school, then we've made progress. That's fantastic. Oh, I'll mute myself. Hold on.
In all of this,
wealth of information we've been getting, any information now, which I guess again will come out once we receive more information with changes to any quarantine guidelines.
That's the other frustration.
right, there might be.
The other frustration is right now we're dealing with contact tracing at 6 feet apart. Right now, I mean, and that's what I've said all along, why we kept the guards up. We kept the guards up because even though people could sit 3 feet in a class, the contact tracing was still at 6 feet. And we're not looking to shackle kids. We're really not. We're looking to keep everybody safe and we spent the last month planning end of the year activities in anticipation that things would open up. I mean, Scott Burson and Nicole Schnabel literally had 2 graduation plans, one plan A and one plan B, and we were really hoping for the Tilla Center and everybody to be together. This is how we've coexisted all year long. Plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, to try to provide things that were most open for kids. And it really pains me that, anybody in the community thinks that anybody at this table doesn't want kids to be the healthiest and the happiest that they can be. That's just the truth of the matter. That's why we're here. But, my job is to do it to the best of my ability. And, it's no criticism of anybody else, but flipping a switch, I don't know how you do that. And I don't know how you look at the family that does have a child that's medically fragile, immunocompromised, and say, well, we just don't have a plan for you in the moment. You have to have a plan for not every scenario, but as best you can predict the scenarios, you have to have a plan. And that's why we called a meeting for the task force today. I already articulated some of the deep issues that we spoke about today. Can we have different remote? I would not promote remote learning at the high school level, but a lot of kids are going to be afraid to, so maybe at the high school level, we just say masks on. You want to go to graduation, you want to go to prom, you've got, 8 days left? 8 days left. Let's keep the masks on, keep everybody so that we're not going to be quarantined and you can go to prom and you can go to graduation. And maybe we say K through 8, but we have to talk about these things and we don't even know what the rules are yet. So these are the deep conversations we're having so we avoid some of the sadness that maybe, listen, there'll be great joy too, but the fact of the matter, everything that I'm articulating are concerns that parents have raised with me, either in phone calls or in email exchanges.
We just need more information.
Right, but when you speak about mask on and mask off for the high school kids, outside of school, you look around, most of these kids are not wearing masks, so.
But that's not, but Bruce.
But no, Dale, let me finish. So we may still end up with students quarantined and not being able to attend graduation or any events, the prom or anything, and it may have nothing to do with the school.
It may have nothing to do
with it in the school.
That's a very good point. It may have nothing to do with the school. However, at this point in time, it would be, I think, less of a conflict if we knew that students wouldn't be quarantined in our building. And nothing's perfect either, right? If kids start talking about the fact they're hanging out in a locker room without masks on, there may be times where we have to quarantine, but in general, we wouldn't need to quarantine them.
Okay, I guess it's just frustrating to everybody. When you see headlines on the news, no masks affected Monday and all, and we always said, I think as a board, we all agree that we followed the guidelines. So as soon as we can follow the new guidelines, we'd like to see that implemented. So
Yes.
Right, and I would too, except we're gonna have to think about some of those things that I mentioned. So, what do we do at the high school? Do we do that separately or do we treat it the same? So these are some of the things that we can discuss and then the task force can recommend it. And then we can make suggested changes to the plan and the board can approve it. We'll try to get this done as quickly as possible.
Okay, that's all we can ask. Anybody have any questions, anything they want to add? Okay. So, any other business? Otherwise, I'm going to ask that okay, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Move it.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'd like to thank everybody for coming down on short notice. A special thank you to our superintendent. She was away this weekend and she spent a lot of time over this weekend making phone calls, answering emails. So thank you, Adele. They weren't away. You were out of state, so you get a special thank you. And right. Did we vote